On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
All Jake and I really wanted to do was 100 units, $200 profit per door. That's 20 grand a month. That's more than what we needed to survive and to live and to thrive in life. When you have more options and opportunities in life, life gets a lot more interesting.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast, coming to you with a special guest, a king in the real estate space, my man, Gino Barbaro. How we doing, brother?
Chaz, I'm actually going to send this to my wife as soon as I get off because I'm going to tell her I was called a king today. You know what I'm saying? She's the
Hey,
queen, but I mean,
she
I'm the
is.
king right now. So great. Thank you. How
That's
you doing,
right.
brother?
I'm doing well. We're fresh here Monday morning, and so I'm excited to be first thing here with you. It's really, I'm excited about all of our guests, but you've got a huge platform. You've got, of course, a podcast of your own. Most people in the real estate space know Jake and Gino, and so to have you here is a true honor. And I want to let people that don't know you get to know you here today and maybe the story behind the story. So tell us, Gino, a little bit about what you guys do.
Jake and I started investing together in 2011. He was the drug rep and I was the pizza guy. I owned a restaurant, one restaurant in New York. I opened in 1994. And
Love it.
he was a pharmaceutical sales rep when things were good. The getting was good, as they say. And in 2009, we met. And I guess the getting wasn't that good for either one of us because we're like, brosifs, we need to do something because we are struggling. You hate what you're doing. The Great Recession just wiped everyone out. Everyone thinks real estate got wiped out. The restaurant was working harder and making less. At the time, I had four kids, and I'm like, I need to do something. And we got together in 2009. In 2011, Jake moves down to Knoxville, Tennessee from New York. And I'm like, Jake, where's Knoxville, number one? Because no one knew where Knoxville was back then. I'm sorry, it's the truth. And now everyone knows where Knoxville is. And
Yeah.
we just started looking for deals. And in 18 months, long time, it took us to find that very first deal because we had no process. We had no framework, but we did find that first deal after 18 months. And, 3 months after that, we got our second deal. And I guess the rest is history. We own today 1,700 units. We syndicated deals, but the vast majority of our portfolio is not syndicated. We just
Okay.
continue to refinance deals, put
Yeah.
money back into the business, refinance out. I left the restaurant in 2016 and I went into real estate full time. And that's about the time that I started the Jake and Gino education community.
Yeah, I love it. So first off, the history there of just your own success in real estate. I love 1,700 units. That's incredible. Well done. But then at the very end there, you kind of just lightly slid that in that now you teach not just a few people, but hundreds, if not thousands of other students. I think I saw in one of your videos, your students represent like 20,000 plus units across the country. Is that right? Is that more
It's
now?
Actually, it's 71,364. We have a weekly huddle on Monday morning. So before I got on with you, I'm on with the executive team. We're looking at our numbers. It's over almost $400 million in capital raised from the students. Because Chaz, the thing with multifamily, it's a little different than single family. Once you get going, you either just finish or you just figure it out with the framework and you just start snowballing and
Yeah.
snowballing. And that's what a lot of our students have done. And they realize one thing, you've talked about being in business, that real estate and specifically multifamily, I think, is really an entrepreneurial venture. We create multifamily entrepreneurs at Jake and Gino. And if you're flipping homes, you're fixing homes, you're doing rentals, it really is a business. It is real estate, but you have to look at it as systems and processes. It's buy right, finance right, but it's also manage right. And if you can't manage these assets, they're like having kids. You're having kids, you have to raise your children. And if you don't, bad things going to happen to those deals. As we're seeing right now, as we're seeing the operators in the space right now, it's a wonderful thing to go out there and raise capital. It's a lot of fun. But raising the capital, you're a fiduciary. And if you can't operate these deals, it's not easy. Find someone out there who can operate the deals, who can partner with you. And as you saw, Joe Sullivan, he's in your community as well. Great student of ours. He's a Jake and Gino coach. He's an operator in Kansas City. He's doing a phenomenal job. He's buying these assets, he's financing them, but he's also managing these assets.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. There's a huge business component to it. I think a lot of people think, real estate and business are separate. I was telling you before we hit the record button, we've had probably 100, or so real estate investors, some very large portfolios, some just getting rolling. Obviously to be on the show, they've got to have a qualification, but to get rolling in comparison to someone like you with 1,700. But the reality remains the same that inside the asset, okay, you call it a building that has 200 units and people are paying rent. The asset could also be a business, an HVAC company that is providing a service, and it's really the same fundamentals is what I'm hearing you say, and so I'm anxious to jump into some of those things. When did you know in the real estate journey that it was really business? Because obviously you came from business.
That's a great question. I'm a slow learner, just like you, Chaz. I struggle to get on this podcast. So for us, I think at around 600 units, we were using this crappy property management software. We didn't have enough maintenance techs. We didn't have enough property managers. We were just, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna gets burned out. And I think at the 600 unit mark, we're like, we need a regional manager. We need someone to help and Jake
We need
out.
to
We're trying to
build a
pinch
team.
pennies here. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. We're a little slow in the uptake, but that's I think the seminal moment because what had happened, we had done a 25 unit, a 36 unit, then 136, then back down to 22. Then we hit 281 units in one shot, seller finance. So we'd grown to 600 units within probably 3 years. So it was for us was really large and really huge. And for me, having one restaurant in 20 years, that was just a shock to my system.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, we're like, we need scaling up. We need to do that. We need to get in on traction. So we had gotten some scaling up coaching, and that just changed everything as far as working on our mission statement, working on our core values, working on what we call a cadence of accountability. That changed everything. And for us, the paradigm of, oh, wow, we're not just buying these assets and trying to get cash flow. There's so much more to the real estate business as far as just looking at cash flow. And I think that's one thing I want to impress upon all this, all of our new students coming on. Treat it as a business. As soon as you get in, that very first deal you do will be life changing because then all of a sudden you're creating metrics, you're creating KPIs for this one deal, and then you're able to scale up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 deals, and you don't have to do
Right.
thousands of units to have significance in the real estate space. And I think if you can start putting some KPIs in early on and using property management software and trying to think of it as that business, I think everything will change once you're looking
Yeah, I
into
think
real
that,
estate.
you're really describing the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like you as the
Mhm.
pizza shop owner, you were there making pizza, maybe not at the 20th year, but probably for a long time. Based was probably a very similar road. And that's how as a lot of entrepreneurs are listening right now, whether they're in a business or in real estate. If they're in a business and they have real estate on the side, then it probably is just that, just on the side, and they're not really running it like a business. And so what I'm hearing you say, the leverage point is to first mentally check, am I running a business? And
Mhm.
so when you take a look at a business, you kind of already mentioned systems and process. We kind of hinted at that a team comes along with that. But in your mind, when you're telling one of your students to, okay, from the beginning, run it like a business, what's the formula to that? Or what are the things that pop up in your mind?
So, Chaz, for me, I at the restaurant had no core values and I had no mission statement. So every time there was a problem with an employee, or every time something didn't get pulled through, it was their fault. It was never my fault. I was hiding in the kitchen, washing dishes, doing menial $12 an hour work when I should have been getting somebody else to. I was thinking about how much money I was making every week instead of thinking for the long term. The seminal moment for me came when I was in the shed at my restaurant and I'm putting away the containers to go and I'm putting away bags of flour. It's $12 an hour work. And I've got my cell phone jammed to my ear like this, for those of you watching this thing live. And I'm negotiating that 281 unit deal, that $11 million deal. And I'm saying to myself, I'm doing $12 an hour work and I'm negotiating this massive. What the hell am I doing? There's going to come a point in your journey where you're like, this is not a part time gig anymore. And that was it right then and there. But if I look back at the mistakes that I made with the restaurant, the first thing was I started that restaurant business to provide for my family. And I think if I had looked at it differently and I was, started that business to provide for the customers who came in and those customers would provide for my family, that I think was all of a sudden the shift. So it's the same thing with the education company here. I didn't start this education company to provide for my family because the real estate is providing for my family. The education company was started to provide for the students and to provide for the employees here. So ultimately, when they're here for 2 years, they can start investing with Jake and Gino. And once I had that shift, it was like, okay, I'm providing value for them. The more value I provide for them, the more money I'm going to make on this side. That was a shift for me. And the other one is I keep coming back to the core values, values.
Okay.
We didn't have those early on in the restaurant. I never had them. And when I started Jake and Gino, I already had them because about year 3, we sat down, we scaled up with the property management company. And with that system right there, we had people first, make it happen, extreme ownership, unwavering ethics, and growth mindset. Those are the 5 core values. It took us months to flesh them out and our mission statement to create communities that empower people to be the best versions of themselves. Whether that's our education company, that's our property management company, that's our syndication company, where we're taking care and working with investors, we have to really think about how to provide value for them and how to continue to scale. And there's so many different systems you could implement to scale, but having quarterly priorities, we never had quarterly priorities. We just went out and, hey, what do we need to do this week or this month?
Right.
Really dialing those in is really important. And I think having touch points, As you grow, you need to get on calls with team members weekly, daily, whatever that looks like. When Jake and Gina, the two Yahoos, are working by themselves, I can pick up the call and say, "Hey, Jake, how's the deal going? Yeah, you have 30 or 40 units." But with the end in mind, we really need to have those dedicated touch points every day with the team member or every week. And I think those are some of the things that we learned as we started scaling up. Communication is paramount. Working with, the team members and making sure that they're being heard is really, really important. Those are some of the things that we learned as we started to scale.
Yeah, tell me, you said something that kinda drew up some past experience, maybe a wound, but the moment in time of you setting an appointment, right, or setting a meeting, whether it's every day or once a week, whatever that cadence is, you're bringing order
Yeah.
to the business, to your team, to you, to your life, and so the experience previous, similar scenario for you is that I had to set a cadence for one of my companies, and because I didn't have a specified meeting, and so once I did that, though, it eliminated all these phone calls and texts throughout the week because guess what? We were gonna meet on this day at this time. And so ideally, all those things were kept and saved, and then we did them on that one specific day at that one specific time. Of course, there's always things that come outside of that, but the person listening right now that's, within a couple of years of starting their business, they're maybe sub $1 million in revenue or maybe sub 100 units. They're still very much like, all over the place. But I'm hearing you say, very similar to my experience, is that if you just bring a little bit of order, it actually allows for impact. Talk about this a little bit.
So it comes down to discipline. And I think the discipline is very difficult because if it's only you and another person, have a weekly, what we call weekly level 10 meetings. So we have them with every one of our property managers. I have them with all of my employees here. So we have a daily sales huddle. So before I got on with you this morning, I had a sales huddle call for 15 minutes with the two sales guys. We have a weekly huddle with our executive team every Monday at 8 a.m. We go through KPIs, we go through wins, we go through losses. We try to, give shout outs as well. It's about 30 minutes. And we have a daily huddle in the morning with the Jake and Gino team at 8:45 before the day starts. It's for 15 minutes. And that weekly call that you talk about is so crucial because I don't want to get texts every day saying, "This is what I have, this is what I have." We have what we call a little parking lot on that weekly level 10 dock. And on the bottom, the parking lot, I've got this idea. Throw it on there. I have to schedule this podcast. Throw it on there. I have this meeting that I need to get to. And when the weekly level 10 meeting comes at 9 o'clock, whenever it's scheduled every week, and it's one of those meetings that's really great because it's 30 minutes and it's pointed. There's structure to it. We don't get on and say, "How you feeling?" We really get on and talk about what happened to the week. And on that level 10 meeting, we have our quarterly priorities. So if that team member has a quarterly priority, well, what are you doing? What are the tasks involved with that quarterly priority? Because I think a priority for us is anything that takes more than 8 hours. Are you building website? Are you building a
Right.
funnel? Are you creating content? Whatever that looks like. And then from there, whoever owns that priority, let's task it down. The tasks, the
Mm,
duties that you need to do. And every week you're getting on with that team member and going through that. And then if you have any other epiphanies, because right now we're doing a virtual model, and a virtual model is going to take more than 8 hours. So I need to get on with the team member, break it down. Look, what do the calls look like? What does the content look like? How are we going to market this thing? How are we going to schedule it? If I just say, let's do it, there's no structure to it. It may get done, but it's so haphazard and it may or may not happen. But when you're getting on weekly calls, and like you said, I don't want to get texts every day about what's going on, what's on fire. If it's really on fire, that's important. But if it's something that you don't want to forget, go to the level 10 dock, put it on the parking lot, and then the following week we can have that discussion.
yeah, those are great insights. The on fire comment, I remember this was probably 10 or so years ago. I was heading to one of my first elk hunts out west, and I had a couple of restaurants at that time. And anytime you go out of town, that's when things break or fall apart until the fire no longer becomes the fire, right? And that's in essence what you're saying. And so I even had the epiphany. I remember thinking like, only call me if it's burning. And then I was like, wait a second. No, don't call me. Call 911. Like, I can't even do anything. So don't like, literally, there's no reason
Yeah.
for you to call me.
Yeah,
And
because if you're
so
gonna go in there and you're gonna see it on fire, you're gonna start crying anyway. You're like, "What can I do? I can't do anything anyway." You're right.
yeah, yeah, just let
100%.
me let me let me hunt the elk, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. There's obviously I don't wanna paint a reckless attention to your business with that, but there's freedom in that. When you realize what Gino's telling you is, hey, look, order brings happiness. Is that I mean, that's the equation here. Order equals happiness. And you're frustrated in your business because there's probably not enough order. So for the person that's listening right now, Gino, and they're new, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, dude, just like hit my brain and I got all this stuff and now I got to get all these meetings. I got to get in order. What's like just like step one for them to take?
I think step one for me would be to see any tasks or any duties that you're doing that you can farm out. I mean, early on with Jake and Gino, Jake was editing the podcasts. He sucks he can't even turn a computer on, and he was editing the podcast. Now, 6 or 7 years ago, that was probably 10 or $15 an hour work, but why was he doing it? We just didn't know, we didn't know. When you think in your mind that, "Man, I really need to hire somebody to do this," you're way past that. You should have already hired that person. So take a real deep dive, and don't let me hear you that say that I can do anything better than everybody else. Maybe you can, but you can't do everything. Don't be washing dishes and working in the shed and throwing out the garbage like I did. There are other people who are qualified to do that. Bookkeeping is not rocket science. If you don't like to bookkeep, why are you bookkeeping? Now, you may need to learn it, but yeah, I don't think you have to do it. If you're in real estate, I don't think you need to sit in the office as a property manager and rent your units. Go hire somebody for 40 or 50 grand a year to do that. I don't think you need to go out and change toilets and fix toilets and get a maintenance tech. That's why you want to scale in multifamily and get those units or hire a property management company to do that for you, because the value in real estate is you want to build your portfolio and get as much equity in these deals as possible. Let those minimal tasks go out. So to answer your question is take a deep dive into your business and see where there's holes, see what you're not really good at, obviously, get that farmed out and start getting that off your plate. And I think what you need to do as an entrepreneur is to start focusing on anything that generates revenue. That is, if you're on here and you want to scale the education company, get on podcasts, start doing more virtual events, start getting on more stages. I think that's what I need to do. And I need a lot of my team members to do the ops and do the back end. Imagine me sitting there editing a podcast right now. It would take me 3 hours. I can't even turn the damn thing on. Like, could you imagine? So that's something where you're sitting there, be honest with yourself and say, why am I doing this job? I mean, where can I find? There's so many VAs out there. There's so many companies out there that weren't there 10 years ago. So go out and find your weaknesses, hire them, and focus on generating revenue for the company.
Yeah, the generating revenue piece is obviously a great decision. Is there, you kind of mentioned a couple of things there for you for like an education company, getting on podcasts, getting on stages. For a real estate investor, what does that look like?
For a real estate investor, my personal opinion, there's two things you're doing. You're sourcing deals and you're sourcing capital. Those are the two things you're constantly doing as I think a multifamily, but even single family, even self-storage. You need to look for deals. And what does that mean in Stephen Covey's quadrant? It's not urgent, but it's really important. And how do you measure it as an entrepreneur? Well, when you're going out to these events and you're talking to brokers and you're talking to property management companies, it's not really an urgent task and there's no money being generated today, but you're creating relationships and 3 months down the road, they may come to fruition. So you need to focus on the deal flow, and deal flow comes from meeting brokers, meeting other members in the community, going to these live events. We have an event October 14th and 15th this year. It's probably going to air already after, but go out and go to a couple of live events every year. Go to meetups, start networking. And as far as deal flow, that's how you take care of it. But raising capital, you need to be raising capital and sourcing capital just in case you find a deal that you can't take down by yourself. You have the ability to bring in investors. And that's something early on that we didn't focus on because we just kept refinancing these deals. But you want to have the luxury of saying, hey, this is a $22 million deal. Where am I going to get 4 million bucks? Oh, well, I've got 72 investors on my database. Let me go to them. When you have more options and opportunities in life, life gets a lot more interesting. Most people won't even look at that opportunity because they don't have the investors. If you have the luxury of looking at that deal because you have the investors, that's really important. So two, deal flow and capital.
Yeah, and we could break that down for any business. It's marketing, leads, sales, right?
Yes.
It's getting into the river, and I'm going back to your description of doing dishes, putting the flour away in the shed. It's like, luckily for you, you were multitasking with the phone on the ear, but for the most part, before that, for you and for listeners here today, because they're putting away the flour, they're not in the river over here catching opportunity, which is what you're talking about. And so you
Mhm.
got to like get rid of those tasks, not because you're better than, but because the more levered activity is over here in the process of prospecting, right?
Mhm. Yes, and I'll give you an example at the restaurant. I should have been more out front in the restaurant. I was building a brand. I was actually at one point, I'm just a psycho worker. I've got 6 kids. We homeschool the kids. Restaurants, a 50-hour plus work weekends. At that time, I was creating Kajabi courses. I was creating YouTube courses. I was writing a cookbook. I was doing physical orders, physical products. I was creating a brand with the restaurant. But how was I doing that at the same time while I'm doing the real estate and I'm working in the kitchen at the same time? I could have probably expanded the restaurant brand if I'd pulled myself out and said, let me get somebody else. Thankfully, I want to say I didn't. So I made that mistake. So it led me to the real estate and it led me to Jake and Gino. It opened another door. But I think you're just going to have to get over the idea of not having to grind. This whole word grinding nowadays takes on a bad connotation. And for me, it's a good connotation because you're willing to work hard. And those who work hard will, I think, ultimately have the luxury of not having to work hard, working smart later on down the road. You need to start out any venture you do working hard. You have to learn the business. No one's going to teach you, I mean, even how to wash dishes or how to shoot a video or how to do your bookkeeping, right? Or how to talk to an investor. Those are all things you learn. And then once you learn them, you create a system to take yourself out of it and to teach somebody else. But there's going to be hard work on the front end. I don't want people to be afraid of it. That's the challenge, learning it, getting good at it, then trying to, what we say, dictate and just delegate that to somebody else.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Yeah, it's interesting coming from a large real estate investor like yourself, someone who has more passive income than, like you said, like at this point now, it's more than what you quote unquote need. It's okay. So for somebody who's built a system, an asset, or even a portfolio of assets that pay you no matter what, for someone like that to emphasize the hard work necessary is a little bit countercultural. Like right now, like you're saying, we have a
Mhm.
camp that's like all in, grind and hustle and get up earlier than everybody, stay up later than everybody, don't see your family, just go all in. And then there's this other thing over here where it's like, no, I want passive income. I want to work 4 hours a week. I want to be completely present with everybody else, but I don't really want to work too hard in my business. And I kind of want just the passive income. But I'm hearing you say that it's actually a mixture of both.
And newsflash, anybody, there's no such thing as passive income. Someone has to be creating the passive income. Now, if you've got enough equity and millions of dollars of equity where you can find an operator and become a limited partner and invest in them, that's what I would consider passive. But I think it takes years, unless you're born into it, unless you're, the Hilton chick who's got 72 million bucks or whatever. That's a little different. But if you're Chaz or Gino starting out, you need to create equity. And once you create equity, equity can be invested into these deals. All right, that's the bottom line, and I think people don't understand that. And then once you do become financially free, there's another news flash. You're like, holy crap, I actually really like what I'm doing here. Most of us who dream of passive income don't want to work, so you're not going to get to there. But those of us who really want to create impact and want to have an awesome life get to the point where, like, okay, I'm making enough pay to my bills, but I actually really like what I'm doing. I'm getting better at it. And the whole Jake and Gino community, we started it because we wanted to monetize it. But what I've realized is, holy crap, we've gotten really good at investing because of being on these podcasts, because of going to these events, because of talking every week to somebody who's different, who's an expert. And then that goes along, and then you get better and you get better. And then all of a sudden, as you grow, you can start saying to yourself, well, I don't really want to do the day to day. Well, you can pull yourself out and you can start, going, I guess, writing a book or doing something that you truly enjoy to do. But I think the grinding aspect of it, it's negative. We still grind. I mean, last week I was working 14 hours on a Thursday. I went out with a student at 8 o'clock at night. Is it grinding? Yes, but it was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable. So that connotation of grinding can be negative. But to me, grinding is just having a great day, creating impact and moving the business forward. That's what grinding is to me. And then I can choose at one point to say, hey, goodbye, I'll sell all my assets. But I don't want to retire. Who wants to retire? at this point where we are, think about it. Retirement was something created by Bismarck back in the 1800s to get rid of old people and to supplement and say, get rid of the old people. Anyone over 60 years old, retire because we need jobs for the young. So it's something that's just relatively new. And you can see people who are older, ones who are really still active, really creating impact and having fun. Those are the ones who are going to stay healthy in life. So I have no way, no ideas of word retirement. My word retirement is a lot different than most other people. So
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I loved how actually you tied it to financial freedom because before that, the grind feels like survival, and that's where I think
mhm.
like the word
Yes.
grind fits a little bit better into like it's doing something that I don't really want to do, and it's hard, and I got to keep doing it, and it's the grind. But once you reach that financial, independence where you're like, no, I don't have to do this, but I get to do this. Of course, you can
Mhm.
train your attitude and your mind to think that way beforehand, but once you can get there and the nut is covered and everything else is just like, I get to like go be who I'm designed to be, right?
Yes.
Now you're like, I'm out of purpose, right? You went with your student 14 hours the other day because that's what you're made for, right?
And the great thing about that was this student just joined a year ago and learning from him and the business model that he has where he buys hotels and wedding venues and listening to his business model, it was truly amazing. And I think the problem is before you become financially free, we have that scarcity mindset. But I think as you become financially free and you start making money, hopefully you'll shift into that abundance mindset where it's like, holy crap, what is my sole purpose? What am I here for? Right? It's
Right.
success over significance. And I think that's what it comes down to. And I'll give you another quote. It's purpose over popularity. You figure out what your purpose is in life once you become financially free because you don't got to worry about paying the mortgage or the car payment or the kid's college. And you can focus on, well, what am I doing? Why am I working? Why am I continuing to scale my real estate? Do I need to buy more assets? If I don't, why am I buying more assets? That's something where you can actually choose to say, I want to continue to scale. And if I don't, good, autopilot. So I think it gives you just more optionality and more options and the ability to choose what you want to do for your life.
Yeah. What would you say, the person listening right now who's thinking about all these options and they're like, okay, it just seems like a really far journey and the grind. Maybe they're not financially free right now, and they just they can't even imagine living for purpose. They're really in survival mode, or as we call 'em, warrior mode. What's your maybe encouragement to them, or what would you say to that person who's just like can't quite see past it?
I don't want to say I've been there because I'll never know anyone else's experience. But, having 4 kids in 2008 when my dad had just passed away a year before, and I had been going to work with him since I was 7 years old. I mean, I'm at the restaurant, I'm saying to myself, "What am I doing here? Am I living his dream or am I living my dream?" And I was really stuck up against the wall. And I felt like I was in survival mode then. I read T. Harv Eker's book, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and everything changed for me from that book. It was all about responsibility. I had been blaming everybody up to that point of why am I not making more money? Why is the president doing what he's doing? Why is the economy doing what it's doing? And for me, it was about responsibility. I would challenge anybody listening to this to work on personal development. I became a life coach because I wanted to work on personal development. I wanted to work on all of these different skills you need to become a life coach. And it really helped me out. And it gave me clarity and it gave me the ability to sit and to really think and to work on my emotions and to work on what I wanted to accomplish long term and just take the money aspect of it away. And for me, it was that calming period as I met Jake and I got clarity and I chose one vehicle. I said, I'm all in on multifamily. There's no shiny object. I'm not going for crypto. I'm not going to the mobile home park space. I'm not even doing RVs. RVs were the rage for the last 3 years. There weren't that many deals in multifamily. We've only done a couple hundred units in the last 2 years. RVs were big, but we're not built for RVs. So we stayed in our lane. So what I would say is work on that personal development. Start listening to Zig Ziglar, Jim Rome, Tony Robbins, T. Harv. I had to listen to all those guys for the last, from '08 to 2012, 13, even before then. That really, really helped me out. Shut off the news. It doesn't really matter what's going on in Ukraine. I'm sorry to say we can't affect it. There's nothing that I can personally do about Ukraine. I can't do anything about Trump. I can't do anything about Biden. I have to worry about my economy. And if I can fix my economy, then I show up in a better place. And then when I'm with the Jake and Gino community, I can affect that one person, then I affect the entire world because that one person shows up differently to the world. And it's just an amazing thing to think of it that way. Pull back. Think about yourself. Think about what you want to accomplish and start working on your personal development.
Yeah, you said something there as far as like you can't control obviously what's happening with the presidents or, you know, a war, whatever it is. And so there's one thought on that of like that seems disengaged or selfish. The other part, which I'm in agreement with you on, if I'm cutting out the noise or I'm focused on my singular purpose or me or my family or what I'm after, then you just have a greater lever of energy to put towards it. And so I remember when I started in business, well, from being in business 12, 13 years ago until now, there's been, left to right to left to right swing in the presidency. And I'm like you, where I'm like, I hear it, I see you, but what does it have to do with me? Like really all the way down to my day. And so when I look at the last 12 or 13 years, there's been people, their lives have been completely swung left to right, to just like blown with the wind and they're tired, they're worn out from all of the polarization and all the stuff, right? It's like, that's not me. The last 12 or 13 years, I've been winning. I've been controlling my economy. So for the person listening right now, that's hearing you say that, how do they do that? How do they say, ah, how do I give up on all that?
It's a very difficult thing. I mean, social media has done an amazing job of having
Making it known.
confirmation bias. So the problem is if you're watching Fox News, you're gonna see is Fox News. If you're watching CNN, all you're gonna see is CNN. And if you understand, I'm a little bit older than you. I've seen these patterns for the last 20 years. All they're trying to do is just trying to split people apart and trying to factions of one and the other. And where the reality, 80% of the country is probably more aligned. And once you see that, you're saying to yourself, okay. And it's just been frustrating for me to see this the last 10 years, and I can't do anything. And all I know is I've got 24 hours in a day. I have 6 children. I have multiple businesses. I really can't worry about what's going on in Ukraine. That war is gonna be going on 2 years in February. There's nothing that I can really do about it. How many billions of dollars we've wasted there. Am I gonna get upset over it? I can, but then my whole day is ruined. I need to focus on what my economy looks like and the people that I can affect. And if I can go out there and have students close deals, I've had over 120 students leave their W-2 jobs. Isn't my energy better supplied in that avenue than worrying about the election coming up in 2 years? That's how I think. If you think differently, then God bless you. You do what you do, you as they say. But as far as this goes, I need to worry about my family and how I'm going to create value for them and how I'm going to put food on the table. And watching CNN and listening to Instagram, scrolling down, that's a waste of a day. And you do that today and tomorrow, then all of a sudden you're sucked into the vortex and you can't get out.
Yeah. Being here in Kansas City, the Chiefs have been pretty popular the last couple of years. Won
Yes.
several Super Bowls. Mahomes is the thing, right? And so it's funny
Yes.
because whether it's connections or even before they were a thing, and I had a job years and years ago. Monday morning you talk about the Chiefs game.
Yes.
And a lot of times it I don't think people knew what to do with me, honestly, because it was like, hey, so did you watch the Chiefs game? I'm like, they played, like,
I
bro,
I feel I
we're
feel
in
you,
Can
bro.
what are you talking about? We're in
Yes.
Kansas City. Like, there's nothing else going on. I go, the last time I checked, there wasn't a guy out there with the last name Wolf on his jersey.
Yes. And your priorities, your priorities. You're focusing on your it's the same thing. I used to be a big Yankees fan. Back in the day, I was a big Jeters fan. I'd watch them all the time. But then at some point in your life in '08, '09, you're like, I gotta make a decision. I've got a family. I've got to feed them. I've got to become more valuable. I can spend 3 hours watching a game, or I can spend 3 hours, two of those with my family, and an hour with listening to the podcast. So you have to make choices in life. I can't go out on the weekends and hang out with my friends and drink. Got a family, have to make those tough decisions. You just have to know what's right for you. And that's the problem. We don't have values. People haven't chosen values for themselves and live by those values. And if you don't do that, you're going to be living somebody else's values. That's
Yeah.
the problem. That's what I've seen happen with a lot of people. They have values, but they haven't really written them down and really followed them. So if I really truly value growth mindset, I'm sorry, I can't spend 7 hours watching football on Sunday. I just can't do that. That's not growth mindset. Now, an hour or two, absolutely. But you just have to have your priorities. And once you have your priorities in order, go after those priorities. Listening to CNN and Fox News, it's not my priorities. It's not my values. So I'm just going to shut them off.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like really success 101, but you're giving it to us so plainly. So I just appreciate that. You've mentioned family here a couple times in the last couple sentences. I want to transition here a little bit, but for you, I can tell just the energy that you've brought here. I mean, it's first thing Monday morning. The listeners don't know this because they're going to be listening whenever, but the energy on this call right now, fresh Monday morning, is not like probably many offices right now. And so I know that you're all in. You're obsessed on business, real estate, all the stuff that we're talking about. I can tell. But I can also tell, I mean, you said it's 6 kids, you're homeschooling, you were going, choosing them instead of going out. Like, you've already said several things that tell me that you're all in and obsessed over your family as well. My question is, how have you done that? Because there's a limiting belief that a lot of people have that they have to be balanced or that they can't be obsessed or all in on all of it at all the same time. But I'm hearing you say that you can.
The simple answer is I've got an amazing wife. And when we got
Amen.
married no, when we got married, she decided to stay home. She decided to raise the kids. That was her job. And I'm gonna tell all the women out there, it is the even the men, it is probably the hardest job that you will ever do. The sacrifice that she's had over the last 20 years, I mean, it's just been mind-boggling to me. She stays home with them. She's created these amazing relationships, and now we see the fruit of the labors. I have a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old. I am so proud of my kids, and it didn't happen. We weren't lucky. We had to sacrifice a lot. We had one income for most of those years. I could have used her. She was a cosmetologist. Another 50 G's a year could have really helped. But we decided to, hey, let's put that aside. Let's sacrifice. And her well-being, being home with 4 kids, two of them in diapers at one time, being by herself for those days, it's really, really challenging. But we knew what our values were. We knew what we wanted to accomplish. And seeing her sacrifice, I mean, I have to sacrifice as well. I can't be selfish. So I've got to put in all the work. So when I told her back in 2011 and 12 that I'm going to do this real estate thing and I'm going to invest in this mentorship and I'm going to go down to Knoxville, she's like, okay. But when she gave me the okay, it's like, okay, I'm working in the restaurant. I'm going to be working during lunch. I'm going to be working at 9 o'clock at night when I come home. I'm going to be working when I get up early in the morning. I have to be all in as well. So having that partner, that accountability that gives you the ability to do that, I couldn't let her down. She never let me down. She's home 7 days a week. She's never got a day off. She's cooking, she's cleaning, she's the doctor, she's a psychologist, she's the laundry person, she's the chauffeur. She's doing it all. So for me to say, "Oh, it's Monday morning, I can't come in and not want to work," that's just selfish on my part. So to see her work, for her to be a role model for me, it just makes my job a lot easier because I'm like, I can't let her down. I've got to put out as much as possible because she's not willing to let go and not back down either.
Yeah. Yeah, the power of that position or the difficulty rather of that position, it just gets overseen so much, and so I can relate to that. I do not want to switch. We've got 4 under the age of 9, so I'm a little bit
Ah,
less of numbers and volume-wise than you have, but I understand that thick of it right now, that's us, and so when I think about what she's doing, like, literally right now, I'm like, "Thank
yes.
the Lord for you, Julie, Lord,"
Yes.
you know?
It's challenging because if you have to break it down, the value that they provide, I mean, it's $200,000-$300,000 a year easily by between nannies and chauffeurs and teachers and from my perspective. And it's one of those jobs where you don't get that instant gratification. You've got to wait years for your kids to grow up. No one's telling you you're doing a great job. So just go out and tell your wife or your husband, hey, you're doing an amazing job today. Let them know because no one else is telling them that. It's a lonely job sometimes,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because that's how we feel as entrepreneurs, right? We feel like, really, there's not
Exactly.
anybody telling us great job?
Yes. And that's the thing, you said balance. To bring it back to the balance, I don't really think there is balance. When I ever have time to go with them, I'm out. Yesterday was Sunday. We hung out all day yesterday. Went out to dinner last night. Today I'm back in the office. My wife actually does a podcast with me. So she's doing a podcast this afternoon with me. The kids come to my events. They're part of the business as well. They're seeing where dad works and they're part of that business. That's the balance that we have. I don't think if you're going to go out there and say, this is one compartment, this is another compartment, it's going to be a tough ride for you.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Got one last question here for you, Gino. Your
Mhm.
insight has been incredible so far. If you had the chance to whisper in the younger Gino's ear, what would you tell him?
Marry your wife. For me, early on, I would have said to work for equity, to build a business and to work for quote unquote that passive income and not invest money in your houses, but buy buildings and buy assets. I wish I had done that sooner. No one really told me that. And I was at that point just spending money. I'm building a home, which was amazing. The memories that I have from building the couple homes that I had were amazing. But if I was able to put that money into a couple of investments, I would have been able to leave the restaurant a lot sooner and had that option to leave it a lot sooner. I just didn't know what I didn't know. we're not taught these things in school. Unfortunately, we're not taught equity and how to create wealth. And I didn't know what I didn't know. That's probably the only thing that I say I would change going back early on. And I think the other thing is, don't be afraid to find a really good partner. I had a bad partnership early on, and that held me back from finding other people to be able to partner with. It's not the partner's fault. It's my fault. It's my responsibility that I didn't have those core values. I didn't know how to choose a partner. So go out and create partnerships and invest in assets.
Love it. I appreciate your insight, your story, obviously an overcoming of not only just a restaurant world, but hundreds, thousands of units across all of your students, even just the impact that you've given, not just here today, but just in the world so far has been incredible. How can the listeners find you? Number one, if they're an entrepreneur and they're just like, wow, I got to connect with this guy. Or number two, they're a real estate investor. Maybe they are interested in your mastermind and some of your education, some of your events. How can they get involved?
Just go to jakeandgino.com. The website has everything. We've got 3 podcasts every week. We've got blogs we're writing all the time. There's a lot of content on there. Just go on the website there. If you want to get a book, we have the Wheel of Our Profits book. Just email me, gino@jakeandgino.com. I'll send you a free PDF copy of the framework that we teach our students.
Love it. Love it. You still are a king in my book, Mr. Gino. So tell your wife and that she gets the title queen naturally, especially after you've just described her as a queen. But thank you for being here. Blessings to your family, blessings to your entire community and all the people that you impact, all the deals that you're doing. Thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks, Chaz. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.